The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. June 20th, 2021. Ideologies. Me. These days I've been thinking a lot about fatherhood. How will I be a father? I think many of us ask ourselves these kinds of questions at some point, and in many cases, according to our own stories, we unconsciously seek to repeat what our parents did, or do the complete opposite of what they have done with us. In my case, my father was absent for 27 years of my life, and I wondered if I would project that onto a future son with so much travel and projects. But my grandfather, who was always at home, also seemed absent, as if his presence did not make one difference. Will I be something similar to my children? A shadow from the past? And this leads me to wonder how I will make myself present in his life. How I will transmit what I am without passing the weight of what I am onto him. I am. It's something impossible to control. Me. To what extent? I am. What you are and what you have done lives in your cells, and it is the information that you will pass on to your child. What you do will not change what lives inside. Me. How to improve then? I am. Sharing what you have learned from what is inside. The experience, the stories, what you have integrated, your own illusions, projects, always reminding him or her that he or she is free to create their own path, and you tell them so that they are aware of the previous path their cells have taken. Me. So it's not a question of releasing him outside so that he starts from zero, but telling him everything without the weight of that being his truth. I am. This is how you give him everything you have achieved, giving him the freedom to do it his way, to choose the steps he wants to follow. In general, parents do not tell their children about their experiences in order to give them tools, but do so for the simple fact of continuity, that is, to show them life, to tell them what is right and what is wrong. Instead of transmitting sophe, wisdom, they transmit logos, knowledge. Wisdom is the understanding of a text, while logos are the words within the text. And in general, single words do not convey knowledge. You can read the dictionary and only get knowledge of terms, but you will not find wisdom in words. The genes in biology and the traditions in a culture are like that dictionary, full of codes and words. Me. Oh, I understand. So what you're saying is that the problem lies in repeating things without intelligence, but out of tradition. I am. When, even having had an unexpected result from an experience, I keep it alive by simple tradition, I am sharing knowledge, but not wisdom, because there is no transcendence in the cycle. Me. Like the example I always give of Christmas, of many people who still don't know what Christmas is, continue to celebrate it and teach it to their children without the new knowledge, but maintaining the tradition just because it's beautiful. I am. Exactly. Instead of looking for new ways to celebrate, it becomes a repetitive karma. This is what we mean by negative harmony. A harmonic is the combination of certain agents that combine with each other and work in that logic. But perhaps that harmonic logic in a heavy metal song does not sound harmonic to those who listen to classical music. Therefore, there are harmonies that can be based on violence, pain, traumas, or lies that are sustained and that seem sweet and beautiful, like certain traditions or jokes, which we do not recognize as harmful to the integrity of the being by our habit when contemplating them. It is like someone who naturalizes the idea of the crucifix as an act of devotion or love for God, and never sees it as a symbol of torture, which is what it really is. Me. Like hanging a revolver at home with which a beloved family member was killed, and honoring the gun more than the smiling portrait of the loved one. I am. In the same logic, when the arrival of Santa Claus is celebrated, it is nothing more than the celebration of the arrival of Odin, god of the Viking warriors, to the Yggdrasil tree, giver of runic knowledge. Bathing before going to the temple, in many traditions, is not to present oneself pure before God, but because for the ancients, God was water, since in the desert, without water, people died, and it represented life. Celebrating Easter with chocolate eggs is nothing more than a tradition reminiscent of Europe's famine, where there were only eggs and rabbits to eat during the plagues. Thus, many traditions repeat themselves without self-awareness, like sweet memories when they are based on tragedies. Me. It reminds me of Disney. Walt Disney took all the tales of European tragedies narrated by the Brothers Grimm and other contemporaries and softened them into beautiful children's stories that he filled with preconceptions of the time, such as the weakness of women, dependence on a man with power to save her, the absence or criticism of certain ethnicities, the justification of violence and some political propaganda. I am. The stories we sweetly tell children many times are actually the surface of something much deeper that we are not aware of. Me. Like the story of Little Red Riding Hood being the story of the first menstruation and a rape, or that of Snow White being an allegory to the 7 deadly sins after Eve's sin of biting the apple. I am. In most cases, we continue to hold a logos without becoming aware of it, and this is how ideas become ideologies. Me. What is an ideology? I am. It's knowledge about an idea. Remember, idea comes from the Greek eideia, which means form. It is related to the verb eido, which means to see, so one is able to see the forms of the world. Logos is the word, is the knowledge about something. Thus, ideology is the quality of seeing the forms of a knowledge, or following the forms of a word or message. Me. So it's not just about politics, but much more. I am. That's right. We can go back to the earliest times of humanity, when the words that defined the forms are constructed. When a human looked at a bee, he related it to sound by creating the word btse, which over thousands of years would evolve to create modes such as abzi, bees, abyss, apis, bee in Latin, which gave us beekeeping, apiary. The forms we see begin to have names, and those names encompass imaginary concepts, which we call ideas, thought forms. For example, the word bee can bring to mind the colors yellow and black, honey, sting, sound, honeycomb, teamwork, flowers, spring, breakfast, bears. Only a word that encompasses an image ends up becoming a network of images called idea, a mind map. As these maps become more complex, so do the words, and ideas can become increasingly abstract, such as moving from describing a fenced oasis as a paradise around which to build a village or kingdom, to transferring this concept to heaven as the destiny of souls, and around it to building the kingdom of God. Me. Sure. To this day we call it the kingdom of God, of the angels, and we continue to use terms forged in times when human politics were hierarchical and the idea of direct or networked democracy could not even be visualized. I am. That's right. So maintaining the idea that the universe is the realm of a higher being is nothing more than a conceptual translation of an ancient idea, that is, of what the ancients saw in the world of forms. Thus they have named things as the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of men, the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the mineral kingdom, when the only one who has built kingdoms is the human. Me. Oh, of course. I am. This makes the observation of a form become a logo, a word that summarizes concepts and beliefs. Me. That's why I've heard some philosophies called the dark side of the universe the logos. I am. This is a typical mistake in spiritual concepts that only look at things from the surface and stay with what they see instead of what is. The concepts of knowledge, gnosis, are divided into different mental entities called logos, which encompass abstract concepts of thoughts, ideas, imaginaries, difficult to describe as individuals or beings in themselves. That is why it can be called solar logos, Christic logos, diabolical logos, divine logos, sophist logos. The logos is not an entity, but a set of concepts born in philosophical terminology and adopted by the spiritual world to divine archaic concepts of divinity. In fact, one of the banners of philosophy is the passage from myth to logos, where invented history is supplanted by a datum of knowledge. Non-religious study groups were considered lodges, that is, those dedicated to the study of abstract knowledge, converted into cults and hermetic sects by the pressure of religions before the prohibition of studies. Me. And that led them to become almost public enemies. I am. Another of the traditions that makes spiritual people interpret the lodges as the bad ones of history, a cultural tradition that the Church instilled in everyone to distance us from them and their studies. Me. Are you saying that the lodges are not the bad guys in the movie? I am. The lodges are not. However, the individuals who make them up are another issue, because I will not be responsible for who they make up and what their elaborate purposes are as individuals. What I want you to understand is that they use words to define ideas that are not, and they lump people and stories into wrong ideas just by the tradition of repeating them. This is what builds ideologies, the inheritance of meaningless words that give the impression of encompassing concepts that do not really encompass. Like considering that everyone in the church is a pedophile, or that everyone in Islam is a terrorist, or that all Jews are Zionists, or that all socialists are communists, or that every capitalist is a neoliberal. Ideologies do not allow you to understand the sentences because they are left with the single words that encompass them, and people inherit the data packets without taking notice of what they encompass. Me. The other day I saw the interview with a Peruvian politician who considered himself leftist, and before the liberal questions he was asked, he responded to everything with right-wing ideology, to which the journalist told him, "Sir, everything you told me you will do is of strict extreme right-wing vision, and you introduce yourself on the left. Are you right-wing?" And he didn't answer. I was amused. I am. Because ideologies do not work in a globalized world in networks. Ideologies were useful in times of isolation, where countries were at war and needed to unite in homogeneous groups to defend certain interests. But since individuals have a public voice, the idea of following a joint stream is absurd. Me. Yes, I understand. For example, many people who claim to be on the left, liberal, flexible, integrative, have more right-wing character than those on the right, paternalistic, conservative, dictatorial. Today it is impossible to say who is right or left based on what they once represented, because throughout history, people of the extreme left eventually became right-wing fascists. And it also mixes with the economy, thinking that to be on the left is to control wealth to distribute equally, when to be on the left is to give opportunities to everyone equally, which is very different, since to control is more right-wing. And throughout history, they have been the right-wing who gave more freedoms. So clearly, that system doesn't work anymore. I am. Exactly. Today, it is impossible to define people by ideologies of right or left or center, by their religions, philosophies or cultures, or even their ethnic groups. Today, it is polarized with absurd concepts to the point of turning women and men against each other. And one of the big mistakes that are made in ideological equality policies is to value more the number of women and men than the capacities they possess to solve. The countries that function best in the world are run by women, but there was no law that made them equal to men out of pity. Rather, they did it for their human value, for their integrity, and because the people realized the capacities of a being beyond a gender. Today, the discussion is ideological, and for this reason it does not work. It is not a question of gender, but of capacities. The gender struggle is not one with egalitarian ideologies, but with human education, valuing each human being equally, not by their genitals. Me. Pretty straightforward. Yes, I understand this. I agree with that. These are sensitive issues. I am. That's why you have to talk about them. If we seek to create a conscious society, we cannot allow new ideologies to continue to destroy the rational and emotional mind. What did the masters of the Andes tell you years ago? Me. Moving from ideology to biology. It is the main motif of ontocracy. I am. Ideologies are left with the mental maps of things that do not even belong to us as communist revolutionaries in the 21st century. When to understand this struggle, you had to live in post-Tsarist Russia in the early 20th century. Young people who defend names of people they did not know in historical contexts they do not know, and who express their love for social policies that failed due to their corruption and incapacity decades ago. Ideologies create repetitive traditional maps as a vice, an uncontrollable addiction, which instead of making us see the forms, blinds us to realities. Being part of an ideology weakens the judgment of being, of the individual, and makes it lose its axis in favor of the tide. A mere word can move a collective of people raising flags of ideas they don't fully understand. Me. What about biology? It is also difficult to comprehend. I am, but it does not live on expectations and dreams. Biology works after millions of years. It continues to give positive results. Biology is the example of an organic system without hierarchy that regulates itself without mandates, but in the interaction of in a network of networks that maintains homeostasis constantly. Life. And yes, there are always conflicts to resolve. The body knows it and does not close to those conflicts because they are the basis of its improvement, not enemies, but tools of evolution. Ideologies are functional to periods of biology, but it evolves transforming ideological concepts, and whoever seeks to maintain them can become extinct. Me. Sure. So we should transcend the ideas we have of things, go beyond our ideologies, which is very difficult for many who have become accustomed and have made them part of their essence. I am. The deconstruction of the mind, unlearning what has been learned, is one of the great challenges of life. Me. How do you deconstruct an idea? I am. By knowing it, researching about it, knowing each of its edges. Many times we are part of an ideology just because we do not know much about it. Inquire into what you believe. Look for what it is based on, where it comes from. Me. What has happened to me this year is that I have gone so deep into what I believed that many of the things I held in myself disappeared. That is, transcended to another level where I better understand why I use certain words or think certain things. The truth is that I feel much freer of ideologies, more open to infinite possibilities. I am. Knowing what you think you know gives wisdom, and it brings freedom. Free yourself from the logos and become all. Transcend the forms of what you see, the idea, and live life. Me. Here and now.